Facebook, coming in YouTube, getting ready to start my show called Jimmy Rants over on Instagram Live. Thank you for being here today. Good Monday morning to you guys. Always a pleasure to be here with you. And I'm always excited to bring you some of the latest and greatest in nutrition science and what's happening out there in the world of health. It's kind of my jam. What's up, Tracy? Thank you for being here today. We're going to start my show, Jimmy Rants, here momentarily. Just getting the final few things set up. My video cameras want to entangle today. So, and it looks like I got something on my screen on my YouTube feed. So let me clean that real quick. Don't like it when the screen is all foggy. Are we foggy now? It looks like it's all clear now. Yeah, it's all clear. Cool. All right, so welcome in. What's up, Norma? What's up, Rob? Hello, hello. Rob says good afternoon from Jabberwocky, North Wales. Yes. I was reading, Rob, where the EU is about to shut down Europe to all Americans because of this COVID-19 thing. And I read some news stories where they're considering not just closing it for 2020, but perhaps for the next 5 years, potentially, out of fears over the coronavirus respreading in Europe because of America. If that happens, I will be highly disappointed because I know there's a lot of Americans that would love to visit Europe. And quite frankly, a lot of the tourism that happens across Europe happens because Americans come over there. So I hope that doesn't happen, but I'm a little bit concerned that, we're headed towards not being able to be in Europe for a little while, those of us that live in America. So hello, Nancy. Hello, Kira. Thank you guys for being here today as well. We're going to get started now with my show, Jimmy Rants, over on Instagram. And we got a really good one here today. It's a paper from a couple of guys looking at nutrition science and some of the challenges that we know exist out there, and I have a lot to say about this issue. Rob says, I was due to come over to the US on Wednesday. Yeah, dude, if you leave the UK and then come to America and then try to go back to the UK, I guarantee you they're probably going to quarantine you for 2 weeks when you come back into your own country. So, yeah, you could not pay me enough right now to go fly anywhere, even within the United States. Just no thank you. If I can drive to it, I'll get to it. But that will be some of the challenges we're going to face here in the next few months. So, who said hello over here? I just saw it. Oh, Patricia says from Surprise, Arizona, over there in Dr. Nally country. Hello, Cindy. Come on in. So, as always, right here on Facebook, please feel free to share on your personal page if you're a part of any groups that you think this would be of interest to. And it should be of interest to anybody in a low carb, keto, real food kind of group. You can share it in those groups as well. So share, share, share. And here we go. What can we do to improve nutrition science? Find out today here on Jimmy Rants. Click on that little box down there in the corner. It'll take you straight to IGTV for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, you can engage live in the content. You gotta go follow me over on Instagram. I am at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live, just like all the amazing people coming in right now. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. We also simulcast live over here on my Facebook page. I see Carol and Debbie and Amy all joined us, so thank you guys for being here today as well. And then finally over on my YouTube channel, thank you guys for watching on the live stream. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay over at IGTV right after the show is over. We generally get that up within just a few minutes, and it's up on IGTV. We also put the past episodes up over on YouTube, so just type in a keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. We also, on Tuesdays, on my popular podcast, The Live and La Vida Low Carb Show, we air a best of episode where we take some recent Jimmy Rants and we air the audio on my podcast. somebody complained on Facebook the other day, I don't like watching videos, they're so boring. I'm like, okay, thank you. I think that's an insult to tell me I'm boring. But they don't want to sit there and watch a video for an hour. And so you can listen to the podcast version. Tomorrow we're going to feature a couple of ones I did recently about that new fake fat apogee, and then the fake breast milk, bio milk. We'll be airing those as tomorrow's episode. That's llvlc.com. And then finally, jimmyrants.com is the official website for this show. You can go watch all the past episodes there. And if you find value in what we do here, then throw some value back to me. Click on that Patreon link, and really a donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. Well, today, you guys, I have another great show in store for you, because we always kind of lament the state of nutritional health research. And every time a new study comes out and a headline comes out that totally distorts what's actually being seen in the science, it gets frustrating. Like we've seen it for many years. Red meat is the leading cause of cancer and all-cause mortality. You're going to die tomorrow if you put a steak in your mouth today. The funnest one that was stupid was eating one egg is the equivalent of smoking 7 cigarettes a day. And I remember seeing like all of these kind of claims in nutritional health studies, and the average person reads those headlines and they don't go any further. Oh wow, eating one egg is like smoking 7 cigarettes. Wow, I'm gonna avoid eggs. Not knowing that if you dig deeper and you actually read the study, you see the study says nothing of the sort. They're making associations, and through those associations of not just randomized controlled clinical trials, which are the gold standard, they make associations based on observational studies. In other words, a study of a study of a study of a study, which by the time they make some kind of extrapolation out of it, it's so watered down, it's so irrelevant. And so that's the challenge. And a lot of scientists have kind of been lamenting that that's where nutritional research has gone. And we've gotten to the point, you guys, where some good scientists are finally saying enough is enough. We have to get this under control, because if we don't, then our whole reputation as scientists is all on the line. And can you imagine being a nutritional health scientist who's trying to do things on the up and up, and yet you see your fellow colleagues out there putting out crap studies? And they know they're crap studies. The problem is these crap studies then get funded again, and they get a big pile of money from a company, from a research institute, from the NIH, whoever, and they conduct research, because that's how they keep their careers going. And so they make this really bad science, and the really bad science makes a big splash in the media. And that's kind of where we are. So thankfully, I'm going to tell you about 2 scientists today, one of which I have actually interviewed on the Living La Vida Low Carb show before. The other one, I don't know who he is, but he's from the UK. But they look at some of the challenges and the opportunities for creating better nutrition science. And they got this essay that they wrote all about this subject, published in the British Medical Journal, BMJ.com. If you haven't been following the British Medical Journal over the past few years, they're one of the better ones that's out there. Like some of the tried and true medical journals that are out there, they are so fraught with so many people that are incredibly biased because they get heavy funding from the pharmaceutical companies, they get heavy funding from food companies, that they're basically getting influenced by those companies. And they refuse to publish studies that would show anything that would compromise the bottom lines of those companies funding them. And that's a reality here too, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. But the British Medical Journal, yes, they have ties to some of those things too, but they're very willing, and in an open way, willing to put out these open access articles like this one. To me, that shows integrity. So if you're not following the British Medical Journal, BMJ.com, go look them up. They got a lot of really great articles on there, and they definitely are trying to let the science speak for itself and not create science out of nothing. So the two people that wrote this essay, Tim Spector and Christopher Gardner, the BMJ talked about how they're both highly respected publishers of research, randomized controlled clinical trials, as well as epidemiology in the area of nutrition science for over 25 years. And so in this essay, they drew on their collaborative experience and insights from other studies, collaborations with a wide range of colleagues, and serving on various boards. They did mention that there are competing interests with Tim Spector. He is a consultant to Zoe Global, a precision nutrition company. He's also gotten a research grant from Dannon on yogurt. He was working on some yogurt. As far as Christopher Gardner goes, that's the one that I've interviewed before. He's the one that did the very famous A to Z study. This was back in like 2008, somewhere around there, 2008, 2009. I had him on the Living La Vida Low Carb show talking about that study. He actually is personally a vegetarian, and he decided to see the veracity of the Atkins diet compared to the Zone diet and the Ornish diet and all these different diets. And he found that the most weight loss and best health outcomes came from the more low carb arm of his study, which I thought was really interesting. A vegetarian who is a researcher actually found the low carb diet did better. So that's who he is. He actually has gotten an unrestricted gift fund from the company Beyond Meat to support research into potential health benefits of the plant-based meat products. So, full disclosure, that's who these people are, just in case you're wondering. And if you joined us late, we are about to start reading from a British medical journal essay about the challenges that are happening out there and the various opportunities in nutrition science, because quite frankly, you guys, we deserve better nutritional health science. And in this article, in this essay, they share how we can get there and what we can do and how we can recognize the challenges and what we do about it. So you guys ready for this? This is really good. The path to conducting better nutrition science entails recognizing previous and inherent limitations and challenges and building on all the recent developments and opportunities. No other scientific field is so influenced by self-proclaimed experts as nutrition science. This is likely because of an intense focus on nutrition in the media and the fact that food is a part of everyone's daily life. Any new nutrition study that emerges, regardless of its size or quality, attracts unparalleled public interest. Can I tell you, that's my biggest problem with nutritional health science. When a study comes out, we have to know that not all studies are created equal. I wish they would give the caveat, and I've talked about this before on Jimmy Rants, we need a color coding, that when a study comes out that is of an observational, epidemiological type of study, we need to have it be red, meaning stop, meaning it doesn't really say a whole lot about human application, but it's interesting enough to at least take a look at, but it's nothing to really be alarmed about. Then if you look at animal-based models of like rat studies and mouse studies and things like that, okay, that maybe we put as yellow. Again, not applicable to human research and human application, but it's worth paying attention to with a little more kind of caution. Then when a randomized controlled clinical trial comes out, let's put a green color next to that one so people know, ding, 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 this is gold standard, this applies to humans, and the research conclusions out of this research are the ones that are gonna matter to you as a human being. The problem is any study and every study gets lumped together as study, gets lumped together as research, to the point that all these self-proclaimed experts in nutrition science says, well, a study says, or research has shown. Give me any topic in nutritional health, any topic, and I can find you a study both for and against it. I can. So this is where we run into trouble when we're looking at better nutritional health science. A study is not a study is not a study. We have to really put the focus back on what's legit science and then what is good for emerging into good science. So an epidemiological observational type of study, I think those studies are great for creating hypotheses for doing a randomized controlled clinical trial. Same with animal-based studies. Anything that uses an animal and they find some conclusion about that animal based on what they did to it, you can't say that that's what's going to happen in humans. You can just say, okay, because XYZ happened in a mouse, now we're going to make that our theory, our hypothesis for what will happen in a human. And until we do those studies, you can't make any extrapolation. We made the mistake of that in the 1950s, by the way, when they started looking at rabbits. A lot of people forget about this research, but in the 1950s, they fed rabbits, they force-fed rabbits saturated fat. They were trying to prove a point that saturated fat will give you heart disease. Well, they force-fed these rabbits in this study saturated fat. And guess what happened? The rabbits got heart disease. So guess what happened? When you eat saturated fat, human beings, it's going to give you heart disease. And what was our evidence for it? These rabbits got heart disease when they were fed saturated fat. What they did not tell people is that rabbits are not designed to eat saturated fat. Rabbits are herbivores. So if you feed an herbivore saturated fat, guess what happens? They get sick. They get heart disease when you force feed them saturated fat. So that's what happened. But look at how that then had ramifications on all the nutritional health science that came after it. And people seem to forget that a lot of the reason why we fear saturated fat today was predicated on bad science, like Ansel Keys' study, which we talked about before, force-feeding rabbits saturated fat, which they were never intended to ever eat. They never really found human studies that showed anything negative happening from saturated fat, for example, and yet that became the belief of the day, and it's still the belief to this day. Attempts to oversimplify complex science when constructing guidelines based on limited scientific evidence has largely failed. For example, the simplified low-fat recommendations have caused confusion by omitting details about the types of fats or which foods should be promoted or avoided. The result is a confused public that looks to the latest fad or food guru for advice and disregards much of the uncontentious, sensible advice on offer. And that's true. Like, think about when they say, cut your fat. Is that all fat? And what about the so-called healthy fats? What about olive oil? What about avocado oil? Those are fat sources. Should I be cutting those? And then the coconut oil was the big one. Oh my gosh, coconut oil is 90% saturated fat. Definitely cut it. But then we have studies that say coconut oil helps promote weight loss. People's heads get spun round and round and round, and what these nutritional health scientists don't realize is when you overwhelm people with it's this, no, it's the opposite of this, no, it's this, no, it's the opposite of this, people tune you out. It's the whole, you cry wolf often enough, people stop coming, and that's what they've done in nutritional health. They have cried wolf over and over and over again, to the point that the general public says, I don't know what to believe, so let me go online and try to figure it out for myself. And that's what leads people to people like myself. Not that I'm creating bad information, but in the lack of a clear, concise understanding of what's happening, people are seeking out people who are trying to be clear and concise and understanding and explaining it in simple terms so that it's more understandable. And this is what they fail to recognize. If they could actually make the case for why they promote low-fat recommendations, for example, and make the case as to how they came to that conclusion and not just, this is it, this is what you should do. If they could actually explain what it is that you're doing when you're cutting fat and what it's supposed to accomplish, maybe more people would buy into it, but that's not what they do at all. What they do is they say, eat low fat, and they give you no further instruction. So then your doctors, well, eat low fat. That's what they say to do. Dietitians, well, eat low fat. And nobody is asking the question, what supports that? Show me the science that supports that. If you joined us late, we're looking at the challenges and opportunities that are happening in the world of nutrition science. And it's an essay written in the British Medical Journal by Tim Spector and Christopher Gardner, a couple of professors who have done lots of research over the years. And they're kind of underscoring some of the challenges that are out there about nutritional health science, and then what we can do about it and how we can get over it. All right, so against this backdrop, the Food for Thought Nutrition meeting that happened in 2018, which was convened by the British Medical Journal and Swiss Re, brought together scientists, health practitioners, and journalists to discuss controversies and consensus when it comes to nutrition and health. The overarching intention of the meeting was to bring together differing voices, working out what is and isn't known, and then try to find a way forward. Traditional academic researchers representing the establishment and guideline committees mixed in with critics of the system, including advocates of low-carb, high-fat diets, as well as those who are anti-sugar. Many of these conflicting voices had worked together to produce reviews on the most controversial issues in nutrition. Listening to the discussions that followed was a watershed moment. Remember, this is 2 years ago in 2018. The traditional nutrition academic community were admitting that they made mistakes and that the system of assessing the benefits or harms of foods was imperfect. That's the other thing. They want to look at things like saturated fat, for example, but they never isolate saturated fat. And this is a challenge with nutrition research when they say, well, we have a study that shows saturated fat clogs your arteries, gives you heart disease, and you're going to die. All right, so did they only eat saturated fat? Oh no, they had hamburgers with the bun and they had French fries with it, which had all that saturated fat in there. And you see where the issue gets convoluted. You see where there's confounding variables. And see, they don't control for these variables. The big one is when they start doing like red meat studies. And a lot of the red meat studies, they don't look at grass-fed ribeye steaks. They throw in every incarnation of what they want to believe is red meat, including processed meats and the like. They put all kinds of things in there. Plus, they look at other things besides just the meat they ate. They also eat crappy garbage with the meat. But then it's the meat that gives the harmful effects. But why isn't anybody asking, I wonder if some of those harmful effects did not come from the meat, but actually from the other things that weren't even being looked at in the study? And this is a challenge. This is the kind of thing that is frustrating to people in the know, the people that pay attention. I try to share it here on Jimmy Rants pretty often. When they do a study, you better isolate what it is that you're studying, or everything is a confounding variable. You can't tell me that someone eating a cheeseburger and then you blame the meat for whatever happens to them when they're having a bun and they're having French fries and they're having a soda with it. You can't say it was the meat that caused those things. Why don't you say it's the carbs in it that did those things? Or why don't you say it's the combination of the fat and the carbs together? But no, they want to point to the meat. And that's how nutrition science messes it up. Much of the discussion focused on overnutrition, meaning too many calories, rather than undernutrition. Traditional harmful associations in high-income Western countries, such as saturated fat in the U.S., are not being replicated in low and middle-income countries. The benefits of fiber, vegetables, and fruits, the need to reduce sugar, and ultra-processed foods all had clear agreement amongst everyone. However, there was far less consensus on things like dietary advice for patients with diabetes, what the benefits are of keto diets, the role of meat in a diet, saturated fat, salt restriction. Everyone agreed that improving our diet was the most important and cost-effective health measure we have at our disposal. Guys, if they agree on that point, can we just come to the conclusion that if you agree that nutrition is the most important and cost-effective health measure we have at our disposal, that we should be pouring every resource we can into not trying to find the one true religion of nutrition that's going to work for everyone, but helping everyone find that one true nutritional plan that's going to work for them. Like, this is so elementary that it's ridiculous we have to articulate this out loud, that if everybody agrees it's diet that's the most important, diet's the one that's going to lower healthcare costs, diet's the one that's actually going to produce best health outcomes for people, why aren't we putting all of our resources and attention on helping people find what that diet is? I'm so over the low fat versus low carb studies. I don't care anymore. I'm so over, oh, veganism hung the moon and so you should eat vegan. Oh no, carnivore, you should only eat meat. Oh no, keto. Oh no, Mediterranean. Well, screw it all. Seriously. You've got personal advocates for all of those ways of eating, and if someone wants to learn how to eat that way, there's plenty of support that offers those people those options. From a nutritional science standpoint, I don't think we need to be having a virtual peeing match about these things. We don't. What we need to do is give people good information about what good health practices look like, and then they tailor it to their own desires. Based on all the discussions from the 2018 Food for Thought meeting, we propose key challenges for the field and new opportunities to improve both human and planetary health. So they've got some of the solutions, you guys. Here's how we can get it. Because we deserve better nutritional health science, here's how we get it. Number one, the power of big food. The food and drink industry has gone from mid-sized companies in the 1970s to now being global multinationals with immense power, money, and influence. The top 10 food companies, get this guys, this is a shocking statistic. The top 10 food companies control over 70% of what we eat and drink. And they have annual sales larger than the gross domestic product of most countries. That is scary power. And here's the thing. The complicity in how they got that power, I blame on our government. I blame on the US government when they allowed nutritional policy to be mandated and basically formed all at the whim of what these food companies wanted. They wanted to cut fat because fat was expensive. They wanted to increase the consumption of grains because grains were a cheap commodity. So then they produced all these foods that had this cheap commodity put under the auspice of being a healthy thing to put in your mouth. People obediently ate lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of healthy whole grains. They cut their fat, they cut their meat consumption. They obediently followed the guidelines. And we started getting sicker and sicker and sicker, fatter and fatter and fatter. Meanwhile, all these food companies made out like gangbusters, all under the auspice that they're helping people get healthier. And that's where we got it. So these top 10 companies now own over 70% of what you eat and drink. They are producing greater amounts of more affordable and accessible food for our expanding population, but now it's at the cost of our health. The commercial food system has the potential to show leadership and support for the dietary public health, but systemic change is needed first, and this is going to require government action. Well, here's the problem. They have the potential to show leadership and support for dietary public health, but if I'm a food company, why do I care about that? That's not my job. My job is to increase my bottom line, and I'll tell you what a lot of the food companies are starting to do, much to the ire of a lot of people in the health community. They're starting to buy up the companies that are making healthier products. I remember when my friend Mark Sisson sold his company Primal Nutrition to Kraft Foods for $200 million. A lot of people said, see, he was a sellout. See, they're gonna mess up the formulation. They're gonna change it back to soybean oil, and it's gonna be horrible. And oh, what a no, they want to make money, and they see that all of us health nuts love Primal Mayo. I've got some in my fridge right now, and they wanted to get a piece of that action. They wanted to get in on the health movement. And here's the funny thing too, a lot of the diet products like Slim Fast and things like that, people don't realize this, but there's companies, the companies that own those also own junk food. So they get you fat to then help you lose weight. So then you get frustrated with that. You go back to the things that make you fat again, and they're making money on both ends of the equation. A lot of people don't realize that. Like a lot of the weight loss food products actually are owned by junk food companies. They are. And so the same thing is happening with like Kraft Foods. They have Kraft macaroni and cheese, and now they have Primal Mayo. And so they're trying to get it from both ends. And so people get upset that they're trying to make a buck. And it's like, no, that's their job. Their job is not to support and show leadership in dietary public health. They don't care about that. As long as they can make more money. And of course you think with health, oh my gosh, like, well, don't they care about health? No, they don't. The sooner we realize food companies do not care about your health, the sooner we can move on and realize, oh my gosh, like I have to grab control of this. I have to educate myself. Much of the funding of many academic nutrition departments is from the food industry, and that's true. We just mentioned that these two guys writing this article, one of them gets money from Dannon, the yogurt company, and the other one gets money from Beyond Meat, the fake meat company, plant-based burger company. And that helps to drive research agenda. The medical world learned the hard lesson on influence from the tobacco and pharmaceutical industries, but it has yet to fully recognize the influence of food and drink companies, which have a far greater impact on our health. This influence has indirectly ensured that it took 40 years for the first quality randomized controlled trial of the effects of junk food in humans. Think about that. So much influence in the research world, in the research world, these food companies, these processed junk food companies have, that it took 4 decades before the very first study ever happened in a good quality way of randomized controlled clinical trial on the effects of junk food. And it weren't good, by the way. If you missed that one, it showed tremendous metabolic damage happening from eating that. Industry fills a void that scientific funding agencies have left, and it's hard to blame academics who have few funding options to keep their teams going, even if the outputs are conflicted. This is the part that people don't understand. If nutrition is considered a big part of why people are getting unhealthy or healthy, and we feel like that if you could improve nutrition and help people find better nutrition and find a better way to eat to improve their health, people would say, okay, there should be lots of funding for that. The NIH, the National Institutes of Health, should be sending lots of money to these academics and researchers that want to do this research. The problem is they don't. So what is a researcher to do? You can either go out and try to find independent funding from an organization that's a philanthropist that's trying to support studies like that, or food companies. And that's the sad reality about nutrition research. We want to poo-poo that they've been paid for by food companies. And in fact, some of the early low-carb diet research done by Dr. Eric Westman, for example, he went to Dr. Atkins and said, hey, I love what you're doing here, but where's the research? And Dr. Atkins said, I don't need research. And Dr. Westman, being a researcher, said, well, you kind of do. Give me some money and I'll show you what research can do. So the first Atkins study that came out in '98 was paid for by the Atkins Foundation. And of course it was poo-pooed at the time. Oh, it's heavily influenced by the money, but he had nowhere else that he was going to get that money. It's a tough little road to hoe if you are a researcher desperately trying to find someone to fund the research you're doing. Greater transparency of funding sources, compliance with pre-registration of all trials, that's another one. Not everybody's pre-registering their trial so people can see what's on the docket. And if they don't know what's coming and then suddenly you come out with a study, it kind of looks suspicious. And increasing the publishing rate of null findings. Oh, this is a big one. If a company pays for a study of their product, for example, let's say Dannon and their yogurt, and this guy does the study, but then it doesn't look good for the yogurt company, a lot of times they just kill that study. They don't want it to get out there because it would hurt their business, not help them. And so they're calling for, hey, we need to publish those findings. It would all help to improve the science generated by funding from big food. That last one, guys, is a big one. Did you realize that if a company paid for a study and they did not get the results that they desired from that study, they have the right to just shut it all down and never publish it? They do. And it happens a whole lot more often than you realize. Number 2 is funding. The percentage of funding directly towards obesity and nutrition research globally is very tiny compared with other fields like HIV or cancer. Pharmaceutical companies invest almost $1 billion on average to bring to the market drugs that show marginal benefits over their competitors. But obtaining just a mere $2 to $4 million for a nutrition study is a lifetime aspiration for most nutrition scientists. So we balk at the idea of paying a fraction of the budget of drug trials to test the health benefits or safety of foods we eat every day. Governments and health agencies need to start re-examining their priorities when it comes to funding, as should philanthropic individuals and organizations, so we can fund better studies. For years, food companies have said they lack the funds to do proper long-term research on the health and safety of their foods, but this is no longer true. This is the thing, guys. They act like the money's not there. The money is there. It's how they choose to allocate that money. For the pharmaceutical companies, they would spend $1 billion just to let their drug supersede the drug of a competitor. That's it. And if they could just allocate a little bit of that money to go towards nutritional health research, then we could actually get good science that would support some of the things. Unfortunately, it would probably undermine some of those pharmaceutical companies and what they're trying to peddle. You'll find it's not necessary. Same with the food companies. They can put a little bit of the money that they do in their marketing towards research, but what if it finds a finding that makes their product look bad? Again, there is no desire for them to do that. Number 3, even the experts don't always agree. Expert scientists frequently assemble to create or update dietary guidelines, both nationally and globally. They're currently doing that here in America. The 2020 Dietary Guidelines is coming out later this year. We're going to have the preliminary findings in July, by the way. So when that happens, don't you know I'm going to be right here on Jimmy Rants telling you all about it. Guidelines have become more evidence-based and often include an evaluation of scientific quality and corresponding statements of impact on strengths of recommendations. However, many notable areas of disagreement within those guidelines exist, particularly on things like dairy, meats, and beverages. Some of this disagreement is due to the wide range of food products in these categories and our tendency to oversimplify, making a single recommendation across a broad health spectrum problematic. And that's the thing, when you oversimplify, meat is bad. Okay, does that include grass-fed beef? Are we talking about processed meats? Are we talking about CAFO meat? Like, what do you mean by meat? Same with dairy. Are we talking about raw dairy? Are we talking about highly ultra-processed, ultra-pasteurization, skim milk? Like, what are we talking about? So that's part of the challenges here too. Many scientists sitting on expert panels have conflicts as their research is often paid for by the food industry. I told you on a previous Jimmy Rants that the current Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, and this is no joke, you guys, over half of the members of the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, over half of them are getting funding, over half, from Coca-Cola. They're a part of an organization whose primary funder is Coca-Cola. And so what do you think they're going to do when it comes to sugar? When it comes to how much sugar you can consume? They're not going to add limitations on sugar. You would kill Coca-Cola's profits. So they're not going to do it. But how many people in the public realize that? Oh, they're prestigious members of the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, not realizing they are tried and true to the junk food companies. And they have been since 1980. Another problem is political interference influenced by industry lobbying that can shape national dietary guidelines. When even the experts don't seem to agree, the general public is less likely to consider nutrition recommendations as credible. And that's where we are. A lot of people tell me, why do you talk about the dietary guidelines so much? Nobody listens to them anyway. And I said, no, that's the problem. That's the problem. It's the ones who do listen to them. And plus, it's not just the people listening to the dietary guidelines. It's also what the dietary guidelines then influence in our culture. If you're on food stamps and you can't afford to buy food, you get food stamps, but you gotta buy food within the dietary guidelines. The school lunches that you send your kids to school, The reason everything is on that plate is to follow the dietary guidelines. The military commissaries, everything that they sell in the military commissary fits the food guideline. And so we think they're not relevant when they're incredibly relevant. Next one is study quality. Most of the nutritional evidence that comes or has come from large observational studies, and it started many decades ago. These have been supplemented with small, short-term human trials, usually of very low quality, plus animal experiments. These large observational studies tend to maximize generalizations, but are subject to inherent biases. In contrast, short-term, often reductionist human trials tend to maximize rigor, but lack generalization. Some critics argue that all observational studies should be disregarded. I haven't said they need to be disregarded. I said we don't need to make any human application based on observational studies. I think what we do is we look at observational studies, epidemiological studies, animal studies, and we say, okay, that's an interesting correlation, an interesting finding. Now, let's use that as the hypothesis to then go do a randomized control clinical trial on actual human beings, and let's do science the right way to see if this has veracity or not. That's been my position. Primarily, the reason they should be disregarded is because it's only an association, not a causation, but we believe that's flawed thinking. Remember, the two people writing this are both epidemiological and randomized control clinical trial researchers. The power of using both approaches is to maximize the combination of generalization and rigor. However, improved nutritional assessment methods would benefit both. My problem with a lot of the nutritional health studies that look at observation is a lot of them do what's called food surveys. So they tell somebody, okay, I want you to write down everything you've eaten over the past 3 years. So think about that for a moment. If you were given a sheet of paper and you were asked to write down what you ate on a daily basis for the past 3 years, could you possibly name every food you had? No. Could you possibly remember what quantity of that food that you consumed over the past 3 years every day for the past 3 years? No. Unless you're one of those people that journals everything, and there are people like that. But unless you're one of those people that just absolutely has written everything down, you would have no clue. I can't even tell you fully what I had a week ago to eat. And yet they're asking these people to do it, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. Tell me what you ate. And so then they look at all that data that comes in from this survey. Oh, well, I see there's a lot of meat in there. So therefore, we got to make some kind of hay about that meat and what's happened to your health as a result. And that's how they do it. The traditional subjective methods that rely on memory and honesty, again, sometimes people lie on these studies. Well, I know they want me to be eating more fruits and vegetables, so let me say I wrote bananas and apples and carrots, and oh yeah, I need to write all this down. Meanwhile, I had McDonald's and Taco Bell. Don't doubt me on that. They're relying a lot on the honesty and the memory. Food frequency questionnaires, 24-hour recall, all have limitations. These can now be supplemented with digital devices. So we do have like our devices now that you can keep track. Food logging diaries on your phone, emerging blood, stool, and saliva tests of metabolites that can objectively reflect eating habits, although we need further validation on all these. When we study nutrition, we need to embrace and improve the quality of long-term observational studies and short-term studies for rigor in metabolic control conditions. The power lies in having both. So I agree with them. I think both have their place. I think what's happened, though, is observational data has become the final say. I think observational data is the first say, and randomized controlled clinical trials are the final say. And so I think you need both, but you can't get one over the other and think they tell you everything. Next one, context and reductionism. The recurring mantra needed for every nutrition study should be, instead of what? Many discrepancies among studies could be due to the context in which an ingredient or meal is eaten and the alternative foods that are available. For example, observational studies of the health effects of saturated fats, they vary between the US, Europe, and Asia. Reducing meat may provide health benefit only if it's replaced by extra vegetables. rather than refined or high glycemic carbs like rice or white bread. The concept makes studying large populations much more complex, but it is crucial if we are to understand the effects of whole meals and meal patterns on health. Context is key for nutrition change. And over the past 5 decades, we've seen arguments over the ideal ratios of macros of fat, carbs, and protein, and what we should be consuming. All categories have a range of healthy and unhealthy subtypes, many different ratios that seem healthy. This simplistic view is increasingly considered to be flawed, and ignoring the hundreds of chemicals that differ within each food. The food we eat is estimated to contain at least 26,000 unique chemicals. Many of the components have been overlooked. Well, if you're worried about the chemicals, then why don't we cut it down to just eat real food? Like, that's what's been missing from nutrition science. We try to pretend like food is just this one category. No, food is food. All these like food like disease agents, this crappy garbage, that ain't food. And so if we would eliminate a lot of those chemicals that go in our food supply if we just focused on real food. And that's something that I wish to the ends of the world we could get the dietary guidelines to do, is just make the first recommendation, eat real food. Because if the first recommendation is eat real food, then whatever they say after that then has to fall within that template of eat real food. Right now, they just say, keep fat low, eat more healthy whole grains, and people aren't eating real food within that context. At the 2018 meeting, many participants shared this view and supported moving towards studying food groups and patterns rather than macronutrients and individual items in isolation. Our past focus on specific macros has allowed ultra-processed foods to be marketed as healthy by using broad brush categories such as low in fat or sugar. I hate the marketing terms that has happened because somebody sees, and the big one these days is organic or gluten-free. People see organic or people see gluten-free on a food package and they think it's healthier than anything else. And it's not always true. Next one, demoting the calorie. We need to urgently overturn calorie counting as the mainstay of nutrition advice and prevention of obesity. I have talked about this one till I'm blue in the face. Calorie counting is the silliest thing you can do. Doesn't mean calories don't count. It just means that it's not the way to try to get people to get healthier and lose weight. It's just not. There is growing consensus that it lacks value as a practical tool in your weight management. It is impossible to measure intake accurately. Too many variables will influence your calorie expenditure to make calorie counting useful. New research in humans suggests our bodies and metabolic rates can behave differently when we're given the exact same calories over different contexts. Although many countries have introduced compulsory or voluntary calorie counts on food labels and in restaurants and fast food outlets, their effectiveness long-term is just not agreed upon. This suggests that we need different sustainable public health approaches that focus on food quality, not just the quantity. That goes back to that real food thing again. Not enough attention is being paid to the sustainability of diets that may be effective in the short term but hard to maintain, such as ketogenic high-fat diets. Why is a keto diet hard to maintain over the long term? I guess the bias of the people writing this is coming out a little bit. Sustained behavioral change is the key to any long-term nutritional benefit, and I agree with that. You don't get your behavioral change to kick in, no matter what you choose to do, you're not going to change. It's true. While portion size and portion control can be a component of sustained change, it's time to let go of calorie counting. So that was an interesting one. The next one is the microbiome. A major change in nutrition over the past decade has been the discovery of the gut microbiome, which is more than just a passing fad. The trillions of microbes contain 100-fold more genes than humans and behave just like an organ in your body, producing thousands of chemicals, including metabolites and essential vitamins. Our microbiomes are highly variable. Even identical twins share only about 1/3 of the same family of microbes. Gut microbes alter the metabolism of most ingested drugs, such as cancer immunotherapy. They also influence how food is processed and how nutrients and energy are extracted. Our different glycemic responses to carbs under microbial influence, but lipemic responses may be even more closely linked. Assessment of the gut microbiome is cheap enough to become a routine requirement in clinical studies and all food safety experiments. Manipulating the microbiome through diet is one of the major challenges of the next decade and is more complex than it seems. I'm glad we're looking at this. I think the microbiome has gotten an unfair shake. It's almost been given second-class citizen status when it comes to this discussion of health and diet. But I think it's almost everything, because when you're eating, you think you're feeding yourself. No, you're not. You're feeding all those bugs in your stomach. And so if you're not feeding it well, or if you've got disturbances down there that can make like weight loss more challenging, or disturbances down there that could lead to disease because you're feeding it a certain food that's feeding the bad bugs and not the good bugs. And it's so different in every body. This is definitely a field of research that I can't wait to see start to unfold some more. Studies have shown simply adding fiber supplements such as inulin or single microbe probiotics may not be enough for many people. Understanding the composition, function, and diversity of the microbiome needs to be incorporated into the nutritional education at all levels, and inevitably means that future nutritional advice will be more personalized, which leads us to the personalization one. A combination of recent large-scale population studies using artificial intelligence mixed with digital technologies and the microbiome have clearly shown wide variation in our metabolic response to foods. Large-scale trials like Diet Fits have shown no difference in the mean results between high and low-fat healthy diets, but large inter-individual differences because of the allocated diet. So all of that to say, we need to be paying attention that we have to be individualizing the diet and not having this one-size-fits-all approach, because that simply has not worked. Saving the planet is the next one. The real fears of global warming by 1.5 degrees Celsius with its consequences have become mainstream. The estimated 15 to 20% of the total warming effect related to food production should not be ignored, as much of this is potentially modifiable by our food choices. They reference the 2019 Eat Lancet report, which I'm not a fan of. I did a whole Jimmy Rants on that last year when it came out. I thought it was highly flawed, but they're pointing to that one as part of we need to pay attention to saving the planet. I disagree with that one, but they have their view. And then the last one, education and training. This is a big one too. The final pieces of the puzzle needed to make progress in nutrition include dissemination and education on areas of agreement, as well as the new challenges and solutions. Academic nutrition departments need to embrace multidisciplinary approaches to improve the range and quality of nutrition research and improve understanding of new fields. Governments need to understand a larger slice of the funding pie is needed for the funding research, and that direct independent funding is necessary for most of the trials of food. The training of medics and health professionals and their ongoing lack of skill in offering dietary advice is an international disgrace. I've told you guys about this before. We need to be teaching nutrition in medical school, and they're just not. And so how do we expect people that go on to become researchers, how do we expect them to understand nutrition if they didn't get it in their medical training? Now, maybe some of the researchers are PhDs in nutrition and other things like that, but for the most part, if you're a medical researcher, you're a medical doctor doing research, you really haven't been given a lot of information about that. And same with medical doctors giving patient advice. You're just not going to give it because you don't have it. In most countries, students spend more time learning about scurvy, which is something they may never see, than they do obesity. Many medical interns in diabetes learn little about diet and lifestyle, and yet they become the expert on all the rare side effects of the drugs for diabetes. Nutrition and obesity have few medically qualified specialists, and so we lack any role models for aspiring clinicians. And that's true. The past few years have seen unprecedented change in the nutrition problems facing us, but also major advances in our understanding. The field of nutrition will continue to grow in importance for our global health and wealth over the next decade. We have many of the tools needed to improve nutrition research However, it remains to be seen if we have the flexibility and mindset to adapt to this considerable challenge that lies ahead, and whether this can be translated into substantive dietary change to improve population health. So that's it, you guys, from the BMJ, British Medical Journal. Really fascinating essay that was written by Tim Spector and Christopher Gardner, two respected researchers in the nutritional health field, talking about the challenges and opportunities for having better nutrition science. And this is something, I'm glad they're speaking out about it, because this is something that's been disappointing as a layperson trying to explain about nutritional health to people when we don't have quality science and when we don't have the ability to say this is what research shows and it's good quality research and we can show it replicated in other research. It makes it challenging because people are like, well, how did you come to the conclusion that saturated fat is not going to clog your arteries? So then you start to show them the research, and then you show them another research, but then they come back and say, well, this research shows the opposite, and then you kind of explain, okay, well, that's not quality research. The one I'm showing you is quality research, and so it's going to be an uphill battle trying to explain that to people here in the coming years, but I'm glad to see these researchers are trying to be a part of the solution and not continuing the problem. All right, got a few more minutes left here in the show, so let's see what you guys have to say. Gonna come over here to Instagram first, then to Facebook, finally to YouTube. And thank you for being here, you guys. Welcome in, welcome in. JimmyRants.com is the website. Ada says, it's a trick bag. Everybody needs to find out what works best for them and to go from there. Well, that's true. Unfortunately, I think what's happening, though, is they are relying on someone else telling them what they should be doing in their health rather than seeking out what that solution is for them individually. It's the same reason why a lot of people choose to take a drug rather than making some kind of a lifestyle change. Oh, if I can take a drug and it does the same thing, I can keep doing my life, then that's what I'll do. So I think, yeah, we've abdicated our role as people to have control over our own health. And that's a big problem. And that's a part of this too that they didn't even mention in that article, is that patients kind of want to be told what to do. So thank you for that. We're going to come over here now to Facebook, see what you guys have to say. And you guys were quiet today. Nothing over here. I did see quite a few come in over on YouTube. So let's see what they have to say over here. All right, Edith, I wish I had a time machine. I would have blasted Ansel Keys into outer space before he could cause all this trouble. Well, it is what it is. Oversimplification makes us assembly line projects. Well, sometimes. They're going to lie about sugar, fabricate, and make us all fat for their scams. Yeah. I think that's what they've been doing for a very long time. It's a low-key food conspiracy. Look out below. Euphoric says, keto for 7 years and 1 month is quite sustainable for me. Yeah, for a lot of us, it is. All right. Thank you, YouTube. But guys, I mean, this was incredible. Like I said at the beginning, these two guys that wrote this essay, they're not tried and true low-carb keto people. One is getting funding from Beyond Meat, and he is a vegetarian himself, Christopher Gardner. The other one is a consultant for Dannon, who works on the sugary yogurt company. So these aren't chump change people, and they're both very well respected in the research world. And they wrote all this. So I love it that we have researchers calling out their colleagues and saying, hey, look, we can do better. The public deserves better. We need to be giving them better nutritional health science, better research, quality research, meaningful, practical research. This is the thing too. It's like, it's one thing to say we're going to put out a study, but are you going to put out a crap study, or are you going to actually give people something of value that they can apply to their life? Swiping all day says it's difficult to do keto if you're not a meat lover. Well, not really. I mean, read the book Ketotarian by my Real Talk co-host, Dr. Will Cole. And he shows you how you can do a mostly plant-based diet and still be keto. So you're wrong about that. You just have to work a little harder at it, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. So, but yeah, guys, I hope this encourages you here today that nutrition science, there are people working to make it better, and they are working to make sure that it's on the up and up, because I know a lot of us have been frustrated by the lack of quality in nutrition science, and better days are definitely on the horizon. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, you can engage live in the content, but you got to go follow me right here on Instagram. I am at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live in the content. We also put some good information up on my stories and on the main page. I'm giving commentary all the time. I did a commentary this morning about how most people want complementary medicine, but then most doctors, like 85% of doctors, say, well, we don't know anything about. So I wrote some commentary about that on my main page today if you missed it here on Instagram. We also simulcast live over here on my Facebook page, so thank you guys for being here today as well. We also simulcast on my YouTube live stream, so thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay on IGTV. Right as soon as this is done, within a few minutes, I've got it up on IGTV. You can watch it on replay. We also have all the past episodes over at YouTube. If you type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you'll find the show over there. And then finally, go to JimmyRants.com. It's the official website. and see all the past episodes there. And then if you like what you see here and you get value out of this, add some value back to Jimmy Moore, click on that Patreon page, and really a donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. So that's it for now, you guys. We'll be back again real soon with more Jimmy Rants. I can't talk at the end of shows sometimes, apparently. Bye, guys. All right. That was a lot of words today. When you read a long article like that, it's almost hard not to. I needed water desperately all throughout that. And I've noticed something about being in this room. This is where my two cats like to hang out. And so my two cats hang out in this room all day long. And I think it's the orange one, Peaches. Her little fur is like all over the place. I'm always having to sweep up like a little baby Peaches every single day. And I think I'm having a little bit of an allergic reaction in my nose because I'm always kind of doing this on camera. And I never noticed it till I would watch back sometimes and go, wow, why am I doing that with my nose so much? And I must be a little bit allergic to her fur. So you little fur ball, you're making me have a reaction. It is what it is. So, all right, let me pop off of here for now, you guys. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again soon. Bye. Bye, YouTube.